With each passing year, it seems like I'm talking about how great games just don't ever hit the brakes. And I figured since this year wraps up the decade, we could take a trip through time and have a nice look back at some of my favorite games to come out in the past 10 years. To be clear, this is not meant to be a definitive best games of the decade list. I just want to go year by year and talk about my favorite game to come out that year. I'm going to be strictly sticking to years of release rather than the year I played it because, well, I wasn't keeping track of my favorite game that I played when I was 12 in 2010 and all that. I'm also not going to be including my favorite game of 2019 on the list because I'll be doing a video on my 2019 favorites later. So follow me through the years and let's take a look back at some of my favorite games from 2010 to 2018. No More Heroes 2 was a pretty solid follow-up to the crazy and bombastic action delivered in the first game. More over-the-top violence, more of Travis Touchdown's kind of scuzzy yet somehow likable personality, and more crazy boss battles. Gameplay-wise, the stylized action is loads of fun. Hacking into people with the beam katana and busting out the occasional grapple move feels really good, and honestly, this is one of the more gratifying games that I've played with motion controls. I'm not too keen on the sections where you got to play as Shinobu though. Something about her didn't quite click with me. The part where you play as Henry is really cool though. No More Heroes is also a more streamlined experience than the original. They ditched the sandbox in favor of a menu to take you straight from your apartment to the mission, which is nice for me. The quicker the game can get me to a boss battle, the better. That's not to say that I dislike the retro-themed mini-games and other things that you can do, I just know what I'm here for. Getting to the bosses now, I quite like the lineup in this game. There are some with some pretty cool visual designs like Matt Helms and Chloe Walsh, and then there are some with really amusing backstories like Kimmy Howell. And then there are some that are just fantastic overall. My favorite bounces back and forth between Margaret Moonlight with her really cool outfit and her absolute jam of a theme song, and my other favorite is Alice Twilight with her General Grievous arms and total thriller of a fight. Oh man, I cannot wait to see what kind of crazies they cook up for the third game. Portal 2 is a strong contender for being one of the best sequels I've ever played. Everything that was great about Portal was improved upon here. The physics-based puzzles are as great as ever, the broken down enrichment center opens up the level design from just a bunch of sterile white rooms to a more overgrown and natural looking area, plus all of the different parts of the facility that you didn't get to see in the first game. Aside from that, the story is expanded on, which is great because the writing in this game is hilarious. Whether it's Wheatley's incompetence, Cave Johnson's lemon-induced rage,
do you know who I am? I'm the man who's gonna burn your house down with the lemon!
Or GLaDOS telling me that I'm going to be spending the rest of my life breathing the same room full of recycled air over and over again. All of these moments got a really solid chuckle out of me, and these laughs kept coming every few minutes. They managed to introduce elements to the puzzles, such as reflective cubes and light bridges and tractor beams and various types of gels with different properties. All of these elements felt very natural, and none of the puzzles felt unfair. The aha moments that I felt when I figured out some of the harder puzzles were really satisfying. This game was certainly a triumph. Journey comes together as one of the coolest atmospheric experiences I've ever had in video games. The game itself is rather simple. All you really do is walk, run, or jump to get from place to place. There's also a nifty little sing button for a rudimentary means of communication with any companions you might find along the way. The game's visuals are crazy good. To this day, I don't think I've been more awestruck by a desert level in a game than the sand surfing bit in this game. Modern AAA video games with deserts have yet to make me go, wow, like this did. The rest of the game looks fantastic as well, and there are plenty of ways that the music and visuals match up to create a genuinely awestruck feeling. The story is told in a very effective minimalist style. You will periodically discover bits of info about what happened to the world before you got there, but the important story really is the experience of you going from the desert to the top of the mountain and what the game made you feel on the way there. Well, I managed to make it through 3 entries before I got to choosing something more obvious. Anyway, people really love The Last of Us, and I also happen to think it's pretty great. I doubt I have anything new to say about the game as a whole, so I'm just going to talk about my favorite part of the game, because compared to the giraffe scene or the ending, I don't think nearly enough people talk about this part. I'm going into spoiler territory to talk about this, so skip ahead if you haven't played the game yet. The winter section is my favorite part of the game. It is by far the most intense part to me. At the end of the previous scene, before time jumped forward a bit, Joel had been hurt pretty badly. So you start out this part as Ellie hunting down a deer so that the two of them can eat. Before she can make it back to where she left Joel, she runs into David, a man who is very friendly, it is unusual, and he's flanked by another guy. Ellie tries to trade the two of them for some medicine, but some zombies show up and the deal goes south and she gets captured. From there, the game alternates between putting you in the shoes of Ellie, who is trying to make her escape, and Joel, who is on a warpath to find Ellie. This part oozes with tension. The visibility is low because a snowstorm starts once Ellie escapes confinement. David and friends have proven to be way more sinister than meets the eye at this point. So every time you come across another person as you're trying to escape, it's absolutely heart-pounding. On the other end of things, Joel is still hurt, so it'd be pretty easy for things to go south for him if he ran into too many people at once. The level goes on long enough for you to feel like you're never going to escape this group of lunatics, but not long enough to have overstayed its welcome. And when you finally do get to the end, this part concludes in rather uncomfortable fashion. This very visceral feeling of dread that the winter level curates stuck out to me as easily the most memorable moment of gaming in 2013. I'm pretty sure that I love everything about this game. Transistor ticks excellent in just about every box I can think of. The combat plays in either real time or a neat twist on a turn-based system. The way that it works is, while Red's taking her turn, every action she takes counts towards using up her turn meter. This includes movement and various transistor functions. The way that the transistor's abilities work is really cool as well. Each function can be used as an active mode, a modification for one of your 4 active functions, or a passive ability. You get 16 different functions, so there is plenty of room to experiment and find your favorite combination. Each function also reveals a piece of lore every time you use it in a different slot, which is a neat way of incentivizing you to switch up your methods every once in a while. On top of the fascinating gameplay, Transistor boasts one of the best soundtracks in a game I've ever heard. That blends with the striking visual style in a stellar fashion to bring to life a really cool cyber-noir type of atmosphere. The incredible atmosphere is also curated by the excellent setting. Cloudbank was a futuristic paradise that could fulfill the whims and wishes of the fickle masses, even down to what they wanted the weather to be that day. However, by the time the game starts, Cloudbank is all but a ghost town, but the narration, coupled with the bevy of visual details and lore present, do a fantastic job to make it feel like it was a lived-in city. The narrative of Transistor respects the intelligence of the audience. The narration provided by the man in the transistor is very conversational and natural because he's known Red forever, so it never feels super expository. The story is also rich with the theme of choices and what makes them important, ultimately coming down to Red being the only one capable of making a choice that can actually affect any kind of meaningful change, because she held on to what she cared about and struggled for it, rather than simply deciding what she wanted the weather to be that day and pushing a button. Figuring out exactly how I feel about Metal Gear Solid 5 in the years since its release has been interesting. Here's where I've landed. It doesn't mean as much to me as 1 through 4, but I still think the game is pretty good, all things considered. First of all, the gameplay is great, which is good because in a move that defies series tradition, there's significantly more gameplay than story. Almost everything you can do in the game can be done to benefit Mother Base, so even side operations and resource collecting feel like they have some kind of purpose to it. There's also a myriad of ways to take on any given mission. You could go a total stealth route, you could do a more lethal method, or my favorite method, sneak up behind them, yell freeze, and then make them sit on the ground for the rest of the mission. Or until I strap a balloon to them. Accomplishing the objectives of the missions can be done however you see fit as well. If you don't have a good enough R&D team to make a rocket launcher for that early game take out the tank mission, no problem. Just set down a C4 trap. And the buddies that you can take with you on missions add a nice change of pace when you want them as well. D-Horse is good for getting from place to place. D-Dog is floofy and he can sniff out supplies for you. Quiet will scout for you and straight up kill people you're trying to interrogate before you could put a balloon on them to take them away. Now, the jump to open world and the game being exponentially longer than the other games means that the story suffers for it. Yeah, the narrative leaves a lot to be desired and feels incomplete, which if you come into MGS5 as a fan of the other games, that can be really disheartening. But I will say this, the game has some really cool moments in a vacuum. Like that part where Snake is sneaking into that tent with all of the dying sick people and Skullface walks in and shoots that guy on the hospital bed. Or just the abundance of cool tracking shots and neat cinematography that's present I really found cool to look at. Unfortunately, the whole story is not greater than the sum of its parts. I think this is best summed up by my feelings on Skullface. Every time he showed up, I was absolutely captivated. Unfortunately, by the time he made his exit from the game, he didn't really do anything. Well, except for this. Which is a shame because his backstory is really cool and the dude just carries himself in a manner that always had my attention. The same can be said about a bunch of other elements of the story. Ocelot's not nearly as interesting when he's on your side and not being a super spy for like every other person in the world. Late in the game they start exploring an angle where it seems like Miller's starting to go crazy because he doesn't have anyone left to fight, and there's a whole bunch of other things that they just kind of start the idea of and then never follow up on. All of that being said, I think the core gameplay is still a lot of fun, and there's enough cool moments present in the game for me to be able to look back on it fondly. I've never really been much of a first-person shooter guy. The Call of Duties and the Battlefields of the world always seemed to boil down to hide behind something, pop out and shoot at some guys, rinse and repeat before you work up the nerve to run for the objective and make the enemies magically quit spawning. Doom, on the other hand, is like a shot of adrenaline to this formula's bloodstream. If you stay in one place, you're likely to be killed pretty easily. You are encouraged to play as aggressively as you can manage in order to get some health back from those sweet glory kills that you can do. Or if you're running out of ammo, you can chainsaw down your opposition to get some of your ammo back. The music in the game is great. The heavy and fast guitars serve as a great soundtrack to all the destruction that's happening on the screen. There's no shortage of weapons that are a lot of fun to use. The shotgun, the double-barreled shotgun, the gauze cannon, the rocket launcher, they're all great to use in a number of different situations. There's also plenty of power-ups such as quadruple damage or rampage, which lets you pull off a really satisfying one-hit kill to most demons. There's an abundance of challenges and upgrades and Easter eggs like classic Doom levels to find as well. It's all really encouraging when you want to go check out the entirety of what each mission has to offer. All in all, from a pure gameplay perspective, Doom is the best shooter I've ever played, and I cannot wait to see what Doom Eternal has waiting for me. 2017 was probably the most stacked year on this list, but my favorite of the games to come out that year has remained unchanged. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild is one of the best games I've ever played. The presentation is excellent. The world is really good at creating a feeling of adventure where I can just kind of have fun by choosing a place off in the distance and meandering my way towards it. It also strikes a nice balance between being a world ravaged and destroyed by evil and still giving you plenty of things to do in that world. Probably one of the most defining things about what makes this game so great is its commitment to detail. It's that level of detail that allows the player so much freedom. If there's something in Breath of the Wild that you think you can do, chances are there's a way to do it. Need to climb that waterfall? You could freeze yourself some stairs. You could create a makeshift balloon with a box and some Octorock innards. You could swim up it with the armor that lets you swim waterfalls. You could freeze the boulder with your stasis rune and then hit it directly up in the air a whole bunch, and then ride the boulder once the stasis unfreezes. That's just one of the many examples of freedom in this game. A bunch of other little details present mean that there's always a number of solutions at any given point in time for any challenge. One specific example as far as shrines go is, it was one in the desert area where you had to send an electric current through some metal boxes to another point. I couldn't pull it off with just the boxes, so I threw all my swords down to finish the current, and the fact that I was able to do that just put a smile on my face. Speaking of shrines, the world is littered with them to serve as bite-sized temple experiences that work towards giving you upgrades to your health and stamina. The world is also populated by a number of charming NPCs to give you side quests, As I said earlier, the sense of adventure in this game is off the charts. The feeling I tend to get in a lot of other games is that I'm being led around to something or looking for something, and the feeling I get from Breath of the Wild is more of one of wonder and discovery. What's over on that island? I don't know, let's go see. What? They're taking all my stuff until I finish this challenge? Cool. Eventide Island was one of my favorite things the first time I played the game. It was awesome. The bits of story present in the game are cool too. I really enjoyed uncovering all of Link's memories, and the game has probably my favorite version of Princess Zelda. So overall, this game delivers a pretty spectacular experience. Sure, it has some flaws, but with a sequel on the way, I believe that those can be ironed out. Can you imagine what Breath of the Wild 2 would be like if it had more temple-like experiences and a tighter story? Ooh man, I cannot wait. I played through Celeste for the second time pretty recently. I didn't do chapters 8 or 9 yet, but I still really enjoyed my second go around with the game. Playing the game a second time actually gave me a new angle to look at the game's theme of self-betterment from. Every time I finished a level, it felt really good when it turned out that I had significantly fewer deaths than I did before. I thought that was just another cool way that the game illustrates its theme. As I've said before, the way that the music and gameplay and story tie into each other thematically is excellent. I'm going to be jumping to a specific example, and with that comes spoiler territory, so if you haven't played the game yet, I recommend pausing the video. The bit I'm going to be talking about this time is the confrontation with Badalin in Chapter 6. The song in this part is awesome, aptly named Confronting Myself. One of the reasons I think this song is so effective is because after about 30 seconds, the main melody sounds like the voice chirps that Madeline makes during any scene where she has dialogue. It really helps sell the feeling that she's facing down some major inner struggle. The other thing about the confrontation that's really cool is the way that it's designed. You basically just chase Badalin across the level, and during the chase all sorts of things are happening. She's shooting lasers and little death orbs at you, there are spikes everywhere, and pieces of the ceiling are constantly falling down. All of this happening at once makes it really easy to get overwhelmed, but if you kinda just go right at Badalin, more often than not, things will work out in your favor. I think it's another cool analog to the theme of self-betterment. It could be easy to get frozen up by a bunch of little details, but if you just try to be better and keep with it, you will be. And that's just one of the many ways that this game illustrates its awesome picture, and it's certainly a picture I will come back to look at time and time again.